The year was 2000. The world had turned over a new millennium, narrowly dodging the catastrophic global events of Y2K.
President George H.W. Bush's son was running against Democrat Al Gore in a tight presidential race. No, not the hot one. Jeb would have his time. This was George Jr. Bill Belichick started his head coaching job of what would soon become the New England Patriots dynasty, which would of course make him nationally famous. His current girlfriend was yet to be born.
But as the world entered a new era, two dumb 4-year-old boys were unaware of all of this.
Sitting in their family room was a PlayStation 1 along with the PlayStation Interactive CD Sampler Volume 8, a demo disc of sample video games. On this disc was a demo for a children's game that, for a time, would become an iconic staple in gaming.
One that featured a character that became the face of PlayStation itself for many kids across the world. A competitor to the likes of Mario on Nintendo or Sonic the Hedgehog.
But this hero was not blue nor Italian. He was something different. Dragon. He was a dragon.
It was Spyro the...
Our first experience with Spyro, and actually any video game ever, was PlayStation Interactive CD Sampler Volume 8. The first PlayStation entered the scene in 1995, at the cusp of most video games making the transition from 2D to 3D.
While there were some early games with three-dimensional graphics like Battlezone from 1980, the mainstream moved in that direction in the mid-90s with the release of home video game consoles like the Nintendo 64 and the PS1.
So Sony, along with the release of their first console, started handing out CD sampler demo discs like they were fucking candy. These discs would consist of a collection of video game demos, trailers, and even PlayStation merch promotion.
Not only would these samplers come with a PlayStation, but other companies collaborated in handing them out as well. Most famously Pizza Hut, who would hand out demo discs along with your order.
Some Pizza Hut demo discs came with Tony Hawk Pro Skater, Crash Bandicoot, Final Fantasy VIII, or Ape Escape, while others had Spyro, much like the demo disc that we played. And I think there's something really magical about receiving a physical disc with your pizza, popping it into your PlayStation, and getting to play games you've never heard of as a child. Digital art in physical form finding its way to you through a stuffed crust 2-topping pizza on a Friday night, ready for you to explore it on your own. I truly believe this moment in time is the closest that we got to paradise.
All was right in the world in the early 2000s.
But our disc would not find us through pizza.
When our dad bought a PlayStation in 1998 for himself, nestled in the packaging was the 8th version of Sony's very own CD sampler. At the time, we were 2 years old, so this game was much less bought for us rather than inherited by us from our dad.
It was sitting around waiting for us as our brains slowly clicked into consciousness, ready to be explored before we even knew how to read the video game titles on the menu. We played this demo disc constantly, mainly because it was the only game that we actually owned. To us, this was the only video game that had ever existed. There were a few things on this demo disc that we absolutely should not have had access to when we were that young, like this trailer for a game called Parasite Eve.
What the fuck? We were 4.
It is right next to Rugrats. These two are one click away from each other. But as kids that young, clicking on each game felt like entering a portal into another world. The snowboarding world, the ninja world, the scary world, and the baby world.
But one called to our tiny brains like no other, and that was the world of Spyro the Dragon. Just 2 years after Mario 64 made 3D home video games a mainstream success, Spyro the Dragon was released on the PlayStation.
Okay, rolling.
Oh, it's been peaceful here in the 5 worlds, or is it 6?
What about this Ganasty Gnorc character? Now, I understand he's found a magic spell to turn gems into warriors for his cause.
I'll take that question. Nasty Gnorc is a simple creature.
Simple. He has been contained in a remote world and is no threat to the Dragon Kingdom. No threat! Besides, he is ugly. That does it!
Looks like I've got some things to do.
We open on Spyro, seemingly the only current young dragon in his whole species, tasked with saving all of the adult dragons from someone that they called ugly on live TV.
Nasty Nork, the ugly villain in question, freezes the adult dragons into glass statues.
Conveniently, the reporter says that Nork found a way to turn gems into warriors. So we don't have to go through the whole ludonarrative dissonance bullshit. These guys are gems. We aren't killing guys, we're killing gems.
So Spyro is tasked with rescuing dragons from a frozen fate and murdering the ugly guy. Simple enough. The game then immediately drops you into its first hub world. Spyro is broken down into multiple hub areas with portals to smaller worlds within them. Every world, including the hubs, have a set amount of gems to collect, trophies to find, and dragons to rescue. Each hub world has a different requirement to move on to the next. The first hub, for example, needs you to rescue at least 10 dragons. The second wants you to collect 1,200 gems, and so on.
Spyro's health is measured by his best friend Sparks, who is a dragonfly, or as Spyro would say, a fly. Sparks and Spyro are best friends. They're best friends in the way that Sparks internalizes all of the pain that Spyro takes from his beatings, but has the favor returned from Spyro when he kills innocent animals, which lets out a butterfly from their bodies for Sparks to eat. Sparks will also be played by David Spade in future games, but we will get to that later. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Each hub world has its own theming, like grassland, desert, or wizard. The corresponding smaller worlds in each hub fit into the overall theme. What's interesting about each of these worlds is that they're not just pitched as areas on one planet. They're like different dimensions. They have their own species, predators, prey, and cultures. But I guess dragons are everywhere.
And they're of course the best at killing. So Spyro uses his wings to fly between these portals connecting each world. Our assumption is that all of the dragons have wings and are the only ones that can fly between portals connecting the worlds, allowing them to kind of do whatever they want.
One of the elements that made the first Spyro game unique is the dedication to giving the enemy characters personality in their animations and behavior.
Even though they're just gems. So it's okay when it feels good.
For example, the soldiers in the desert hub world will be stuck in cannon fire until Spyro gets close enough for them to turn their attention to him.
They'll either try to turn the cannons on Spyro or run away and hide in their tents. And if you burn the tents, you'll find them underneath cowering for their life. If you don't kill them, they then build up the courage to moon you, which then of course means you have to kill them. You have to ram them in their bare naked butts. With Spyro being one of the early fully 3D games, it's interesting to see just how committed to 3D Insomniac was. You might know Insomniac, the developer of Spyro currently, from the Spider-Man games. And it's not just Spyro and the world that he interacts with that are three-dimensional. It's the entire UI, the loading screens, and the game's menus. The names of each world on the portals are 3D text, so is the life counter and the number of gems you get. Even the subtitles are individual 3D letters. The game very much feels like a tech demo to show what the PS1 is capable of. A concerted effort to showcase the potential of moving around in a 3D space.
But even though Spyro wasn't as mechanically complex or revered as Mario 64, our little purple friend was a smash hit. There is now a brand new company entering the scene, with their very own cartoonish mascot.
For decades, the two big names battling for the top spot in at-home gaming were Nintendo and Sega. Mario versus Sonic. Japan versus... well, Japan. But these Japanese companies were about to deal with a newcomer to the market. Step aside, Japan. Here comes Japan.
Sony explodes onto the scene with the PlayStation. Final Fantasy VII, Crash Bandicoot, Resident Evil, Metal Gear Solid. The original PlayStation hit the scene with an attitude that gaming could be for adults. Sure, there were games for adults in the past, but Sony's marketing was basically, Nintendo is for babies. This isn't for babies. This is for cool teens and adults.
Al?
Happy holidays, fat boy.
Even games that would appeal to children with poppy, cartoonish animal characters like Crash or Spyro were intentionally marketed as wisecracking teens.
Now that's my idea of fun.
Now, of course, something like Mario 64 is not a baby game for babies. However, when Crash Bandicoot shouts at the Nintendo offices, teens watching now feel like Crash is punk and Mario is corporate, childish, and lame. Now, is a giant technology company using a cartoon product to appeal to teens actually punk? I'm not sure. but he's rude and he has something to say.
Spyro and Crash, of course, were made to appeal to children. They were direct competitors to Mario 64 and stood as PlayStation's new mascots. Solid Snake, Squall, or his real name, Leon, for all my Kingdom Hearts heads out there. The freaky clown from Twisted Metal or a zombie from Resident Evil don't really make great mascots.
A good mascot, much like good character design in general, is one that you can identify just based off their silhouette alone. Let's play a little game. Who is this? That's correct, it's Mario. Who is this?
Crash Bandicoot.
Wait, just give them a second.
This is Spyro, correct, yeah.
And of course, just as an easy point, we all know that this is Real Housewives of Beverly Hills star Lisa Rinna.
With the explosive success of Sony's first console and multiple new hit mascots, Spyro was primed for a sequel.
Spyro Ripto's Rage was released just 1 year later? Ripto's Rage may not have been the first video game we ever played, but for a time, it was the video game for us. We pick up on Spyro and Sparks deciding to go on vacation to escape the rain. Off in another land, a series of new characters scheme on how to defeat the evil Ripto in their homeworld. They come up with a plan to summon a mighty dragon to defeat Ripto, and after hijacking a portal, they receive their fierce warrior, a child, and a bug.
Ripto's Rage works very similar to the original Spyro, but is basically improved in every way. The animations are improved, there's more of a narrative, the levels are bigger, more expansive, and have a greater variety in gameplay. It's the Spyro that people fell in love with the year earlier, just with more to love. Except for one guy.
Sorry, Spyro. I'd love to teach you how to swim underwater, but not as much as I'd love to take your treasure. I hope we meet again, when you have even more gems. Yes, the sparkling beauty of those gems seems to have jogged my memory.
Money bags. Your focus on growing that bag of gems will be your doom. The more you take from the community in service of yourself, the heavier that bag will grow. You will sink deep into the mud, and as you beg for help with the taste of soil covering your tongue, those you burned on this path will be unable to hear your cries. You will continue downward as the weight of those gems you worked so hard for drag you down into the depths of hell. The original Spyro games don't have a ton of depth when it comes to gameplay, so while Ripto's Rage was the defining game for our early development, there's not too much to say about it after Spyro 1, other than there's a lot more. By September of 2000, the PlayStation had sold over 75 million units worldwide. Holy shit.
That can't be right. Wow. Okay, yeah. The Nintendo 64, which had been out for a year less than the PlayStation, had sold about 30 million units. With more than double the amount of sales, PlayStation not only successfully entered the gaming market, but dominated it.
Spyro put Mario in a chokehold. Dish, dish,
Yeah.
dish. Body slam. Body slam. Body slam.
Yeah.
With Mario in a body bag, Sony was ready for round 2. The PlayStation 2 needs no introduction.
All right.
Wait. During the PS2 era, there started to become sort of a Mount Rushmore for PlayStation mascots. Games like Ratchet & Clank, Jak and Daxter, Sly Cooper, and Spyro were beginning to fill out an entire roster of games for kids.
These games were made by a series of developers who had working relationships with PlayStation. Insomniac made Spyro and Ratchet, Sucker Punch for Sly Cooper, and Naughty Dog for both the first Crash Bandicoot and the Jak and Daxter games.
And the diversity between these mascots were unmatched. Sure, they were all anthropomorphic animal teen boys who loved to make quips, but one was purple, one had a cane, one had big ears and a small best friend, and one had big ears and a small best friend who was a robot.
An important thing to note here, however, is that Sony didn't actually own all of these mascots. This is a completely different process from the likes of Nintendo. When Nintendo makes a Mario, Donkey Kong, or Zelda game, they do it themselves, giving them sole ownership of the characters, stories, and mascots to use however they please.
But at this time, Sony was at best publishing these games and at worst just releasing them exclusively exclusively on their console with no control. They didn't actually own Spyro, but he had become one of the faces of PlayStation for many kids around the world. The same goes for Crash. Insomniac, creators of Spyro, didn't actually even own him themselves, due to a publishing deal with Universal Studios game division Universal Interactive. So Spyro had become a PlayStation mascot created by Insomniac that was not owned by PlayStation or Insomniac.
So Spyro the Dragon was released in 1998, followed up by Ripto's Rage just 1 year later. Only 1 year after that, Insomniac managed to release a third addition to the trilogy, Spyro Year of the Dragon. Now Spyro 3 is technically a PS1 game, but released well after the PS2 in Japan and just days before the PS2 in North America, essentially making it a PS2 launch game that could still be played by people who had not gotten a brand new console right away.
Spyro Year of the Dragon is similar to Ripto's Rage in that it's mostly just more than the last. This is Insomniac's final Spyro game, and you can definitely feel that making a third game in just 3 years had caused some Spyro fatigue. Your opinion on this game may vary depending on what you like out of platformers in general. It doesn't reinvent Spyro's movement or platforming in any interesting ways. He mostly moves just like he did in the other games. What Year of the Dragon does focus on is adding a bunch of new stuff, like Spyro on a skateboard, or a variety of new characters, letting you play as a kangaroo, a yeti, or Sparks. So if you like a bunch of added weird mini games, this will probably be your favorite of the series. But if you're a fan of complex platforming controls like Mario 64 or the sequels that followed, this game is not the one for you. But you'll see as we talk about Spyro further, the series peaked in its original trilogy. Playing them back as adults, Spyro games can be painfully simple, but the bright, cartoonish simplicity of the Insomniac games are exactly what engaged us as children. Now I say this with love, but Spyro is sort of a baby game for babies. However, it was the entry point to video games as a medium to us when we were babies. And that's a whole lot safer of an intro than, say, something like Roblox. I'd rather hang out with Spyro than some weird-ass adult talk to me in a chat room.
After the release of Year of the Dragon, Insomniac Games said goodbye to Spyro and moved on to a brand new series, Ratchet & Clank. But Spyro was an iconic cash cow, and Universal knew it would need a new development team to keep milking his scaly purple udders.
You can't say shit like that. Cut that from the video. Universal tasked 2 developers with creating a new mainline Spyro title, but this time, it wouldn't just be for PlayStation. On top of this being the first Spyro for the next generation PS2, it would also be developed for GameCube as well. And the results were bad. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. Hi, I'm Tiny Eddie, and I got caught in Charlotte's Web. I don't want to talk about it. Guys, with everything costing more these days, it's really important to keep a close eye on your money. Prices are changing, and the economy can be shaky, so you need to be actively thinking about your finances. And that's where our big sponsor, SoFi, comes in. SoFi Plus is a premium membership, a smart way to get more for your money. It's packed with benefits, unlocking $1,000 or more in annual value with qualifying activities. Hey Charlotte, can you write a message for someone to get me out of here? I haven't eaten in a while. That value comes from things like a competitive APY on savings, an investment match for your IRA, and you can even unlock access to unlimited one-on-one sessions with SoFi Wealth Financial Planners. SoFi Plus is the smart way to get more for your money, and you can get started for $10 a month. And right now, if you join SoFi Plus, you can get one step closer to winning a $75,000 jackpot. Between now and April 15th, if you subscribe to SoFi Plus, you'll be entered to win big. SoFi is giving away $75,000 to one grand prize winner. 20 first prize winners will receive a $1,000 cash prize, and 50 winners will receive free SoFi Plus memberships for a year. Head to SoFi.com/Burback to enter. Okay, it's HELP. Yeah, all caps. Thank you, Charlotte.
Spyro Enter the Dragonfly released in 2002, continuing the story where Year of the Dragon left off. And for the first time in the series, Spyro can breathe different elements like ice, electricity, and bubbles. We actually owned Enter the Dragonfly and we remember not really clicking with it. And as a kid, I always put the blame on myself, like I wasn't understanding the game enough to fully enjoy it. But now going back and looking at how it reviewed, the game kinda sucked for everyone.
Enter the Dragonfly was panned by reviewers, the majority noting that the game just didn't didn't run very well, having a hard time maintaining a baseline of 30 frames per second. The visuals, even with the new hardware of the PS2 and GameCube, didn't feel like much of an upgrade. The CEO of Insomniac Games, Ted Price, even commented on how bad he thought the fourth entry was, stating in an interview, "Yeah, it was disappointing because Spyro is a great character, and he's a perennial character. Somebody that I think will always have an audience because he's cute. He's just visually very appealing. And granted, they did some pretty cool stuff with his breath weapons. Unfortunately, it seemed like it was shipped too early with a lot of bugs, and we heard a lot of complaints about it. It was a little disappointing." Ted Price then commented on the game again in another interview with PlayStation Magazine, saying, "Spyro has become an abused stepchild. While Digital Eclipse did a great job on the Game Boy Advance titles, Spyro Enter the Dragonfly on PS2 and GameCube was an absolute travesty. When it was released, I was polite about it when people asked, having not played the game, but then I played it."
Jesus.
God damn. Sorry, I was nice about it before I actually knew what you fucking made.
Years later in 2006, Vivendi Games then set to relaunch the Spyro franchise with a new look. Vivendi being the new publisher of Spyro after Group Canal Plus merged with Seagram Company Limited, owner of Universal Interactive in 2000, as we all know.
The Legend of Spyro is a from-the-ground-up reboot of the entire franchise. The pitch of this game seems like it would be a smash hit. Take a beloved video game protagonist who kids had grown up with and bring him back in a more mature narrative-driven game. Grow Spyro up with the audience. On top of that, they cast A-list actors to voice act the characters. Spyro was portrayed by none other than Elijah Wood himself. His mentor Ignitus by Oscar award-winning actor Gary Oldman. And to keep up this caliber of performances, Spyro's best friend Sparks was played by none other than David Spade. So you have Spyro, a talented cast, a new development team with a brand new art style, and a mature direction to match its aging audience. All of this sounds like it would work extremely well. But The Legend of Spyro just doesn't really come together correctly.
We owned this game when we were 10 years old and seemed to be the exact audience that they were aiming the game towards. We were super excited to see a cool, more serious dragon story starring Spyro. But man, it's just kinda boring. The art style of the first level completely turned us off to the game as kids.
Spyro's vibrant green hills and blue skies were replaced with this weird, dark, kind of brown but also neon forest. The gameplay just doesn't really feel like it has the core of Spyro in it. So you'd think, at the very least, the priority would be nailing the narrative experience. They wrote this whole story about Spyro being the chosen one, the fall of the dragon world, and the evil Cinder trying to stop them. But this is all delivered by long-winded lore monologues from Gary Oldman.
When you were just an egg, it was my job to protect you. It was the year of the dragon after all. And our very survival depended on those. Have the ability to see visions, the thoughts, memories, and dreams. What I do see in the pool of visions is that Voltaire, one of the Guardians, clashes with the armies of the Dark Master, who was intent on preventing the prophecies from coming true.
Exactly what every kid wants out of their video game. Long Gary Oldman monologues.
Every cutscene in this game consists of Spyro being unsure of himself, an adult dragon giving exposition dumps, one of them breathing fire, and then Sparks saying something snarky like, "Someone needs a breath mint."
Also, Sparks is not only annoying, he's an asshole too.
Hey, that's cheating. We're not allowed in there. Excuses, excuses. Catch up or give up, Chunky.
He keeps calling Spyro fat. Sparks is supposed to be nice. You're not nice, Mr. Spade. Thank you. The Legend of Spyro: A New Beginning received 2 sequels after, making it an entire trilogy, replacing David Spade's Sparks with Billy West in the second game, and then replacing Sparks again in the third game with Wayne Brady. This series, I'm sure, captured the imagination of some of you during your childhood, and that is very important. But we will not be playing the entire trilogy and unpacking all of the lore, because we're bored by it, and we are almost 30. We also tried to find out how many people played it, but they never released the sales numbers. So that's not a great sign, especially when you're putting out Gary Oldman money.
By the mid-2000s, the world was beginning to change. Spyro's home console, the PlayStation, was dominating the industry and by 2005 had sold 90 million units. And its successor, the PS2, was breaking sales records on its its way to becoming the most sold console of all time.
PlayStation's cartoonish mascots had become stars in the gaming space. Ratchet & Clank, Spyro, Jak and Daxter, Crash Bandicoot, and Sly Cooper filled an entire catalog for children who craved cartoonish games. After the worldwide smash hit that was the PS2, the public was hungry for a new era of their favorite PlayStation mascots with the launch of the PlayStation 3. But for the most part, they were nowhere to be found.
After The Legend of Spyro, his appearances began to slow. Insomniac did, however, continue the Ratchet & Clank series into the PS3, and Sly Cooper received one sequel from a different developer. But their cultural impact was nothing like the earlier editions on the PS2.
At the same time, Mario continued to thrive as Nintendo's mascot on the Wii. Not just inside games like Mario Party or Mario Kart, but also in mainline titles like Super Mario Galaxy and New Super Mario Bros. Mario was bigger than he'd ever been for Nintendo, while the core mascots for PlayStation had started to take a back seat. So in a way, Mario put Spyro in a chokehold. Was I being weird with the wrestling stuff earlier? Was that too much?
Yeah.
This is mostly due to PlayStation's spot in the gaming market. After their disastrous launch of the PS3 in 2006, PlayStation fumbled their lead of being the home console for those of any age. While the Wii took over living rooms by releasing family-friendly games that could be enjoyed by all, the Xbox 360's competitive price to the PS3, focus on online multiplayer, and release of adult-centered games like Halo and Gears of War captured a generation of gamers whose tastes were growing up. The Wii was the console for the family, the Xbox 360 was the console for the serious gamer, and the PS3 was $600.
Halo Combat Evolved had put Microsoft's first console on the map and made the Xbox an up-and-coming competitor to Sony's PlayStation. But when Halo 3 released in 2007, it created a shift in the industry.
This is the Super Suck Lord out here on the corner of 44th and 5th Avenue here in New York City for the midnight release of Halo 3.
The Xbox 360 in that moment took a huge chunk of the PlayStation market, mostly due to Halo and a catalog of other exclusive mature games like Gears of War, Mass Effect, and BioShock. The launch of Halo 3 was so big, Microsoft's CEO, philanthropist, and no other notable traits, Bill Gates, personally handed out the first copy of the game.
He then said his goodbyes and hopped on a jet to who knows where. He's a busy guy. Now, PlayStation was also taking the leap to make games for adults, but needed to kick it into gear to make up for charging people what would now be $968 for a fucking 60GB PS3. Fine, we'll talk about Skylanders. Based on our age and when we found Spyro, Skylanders has always felt like some stupid side thing that halted Spyro's regular games and put him in jail. I'm sure some of you slightly younger than us loved Skylanders, but we do not care.
But upon reflection, we've realized that just because kids missed our childhood, that doesn't mean they didn't have one themselves. In fact, there were childhoods that came before ours, after ours, and there may very well be childhoods happening to this day.
Skylanders is a line of toy figurines that are described as toys to life. These figurines are tied to a series of video games where you play as different cartoon monsters in a top-down brawler. Each purchase figurine comes with a readable chip that can be scanned into the game and played with. The more figurines you buy, the more characters you have to control within the game. So once you buy your $8 figurine, set it on top of your $10 portal, connect that portal to your $400 console, and boot up your $60 copy of Skylanders, you get to use that figurine in the game at no extra cost.
The story begins in the world of Skyland, a realm of floating islands where a bunch of weird little monsters hang out. In this world, the Portal Master is a person who is tasked with controlling these monsters to help protect the core of light.
But when the evil darkness attacks Skyland, it's just the evil darkness? Is there like
it's
a god?
No, it's just the darkness.
Just darkness as a concept?
Well, there is a guy that actually is like brought out because of the darkness.
But when the evil darkness attacked Skyland and destroyed the core of light, the event sent the Skylanders flying across the universe. These Skylanders slowly shrunk down and froze in place, becoming small statues of their former selves. But the Skylanders were not lost. By some insane miracle, some stroke of cosmic luck, they all landed at your local Walmart behind an $8 to $20 MSRP sticker.
You may be wondering what any of this has to do with Spyro. Well, Skylanders is technically a Spyro game. Activision approached developer Toys for Bob in 2011 to make a game using the Spyro IP.
Activision, of course, was the new owner of Spyro after merging with Vivendi Games. So Activision merged with Vivendi long after Group Canal Plus merged with Seagram Company Limited, owner of Universal Studios. Alright.
The original intention was to reboot Spyro for the third time, but by this point, Spyro wasn't doing very well.
After declining sales of the Legends reboot, Activision wanted a new hit using the classic character. A game that would not only, quote, be the top kids game of the year, but it has to be in the top 5 games, period, of the year. Toys for Bob had previously made massive hits, like 102 Dalmatians, Puppies to the Rescue, or the Madagascar game. So this was a very reasonable ask. And boys for Bob did they deliver.
Skylanders was number 3 in the video game industry for the first quarter of 2012, and its sequel, Skylanders Giants, had been the best-selling video game for the first 6 months of 2013. Unfortunately, with the focus on so many other creatures, Spyro was somewhat sidelined at what was supposed to be his own game. Skylanders had become a bigger draw than Spyro himself, who felt more like a marketing cameo for fans of his games rather than a protagonist in the story.
The game is called Skylanders Spyro's Adventure. The game is named after him, and he got pushed to the side with freaky monsters like this guy. Who are you? Put your tongue back in your mouth. Also, who is this? This isn't Spyro. This isn't my friend. Was I being too much again? I feel like I'm getting a little too lost.
A little bit.
You think Bill Gates was actually busy after the Halo thing, or was he flying to the island?
But skipping a few years into the generation of the PS3, 360, and Wii, Sony was beginning to make a comeback.
PlayStation expanded its catalog with an incredible run of console exclusives. Uncharted 1, Infamous, Uncharted 2, Little Big Planet, The Last of Us, Little Big Planet 2, God of War 3, Metal Gear Solid 4, Infamous 2, more Ratchet and Clank, Demon's Souls, Gran Turismo, Journey, Heavy Rain, I guess.
Dad, I knew you would come and save me.
Along with first-person shooters like Killzone, Resistance, and MAG.
Everyone's favorite game, MAG, that is still remembered to this day. MAG, 256 people enter, 256 people leave when the match ends. It's the ultimate challenge.
And as two people who owned a 360, after already having played Halo 3, Halo Reach, Gears of War 2, and Gears of War 3, we were looking over at PlayStation like, damn, does Bill Gates only have Halo and Gears?
He's busy. He's a busy man. But you might be thinking, didn't you say the PS3 was expensive as shit? Well, PlayStation had not only decided to drop the price to $299, half of what the console was priced at launch, but they pushed the new price with arguably one of the best video game marketing campaigns we have ever seen.
Dear PlayStation, I got a tip that you were making the PS3 $299. Confirm or deny?
$299? Bernie, you can't believe everything you read on the internet. That's how World War I got started.
The ad centered around a fictional PlayStation executive named Kevin Butler.
Dear PlayStation, my grandma won't stop watching Blu-ray movies on my PS3.
Look, for $299, you don't just get a sweet gaming machine. It's like you get the best Blu-ray player around built in for free. You know how old people like free stuff.
And the entire campaign focused on the fact that the PS3 had great games for a much cheaper price than when it launched.
Dear PlayStation, Gran Turismo 5 is going to be awesome.
Thanks, Mike. I knew GT5 had to be the best racing game ever. So when they said 500 cars, I said make it 1,000. When they said realistic damage was impossible, I said make it work.
Nice.
Then add NASCAR and a massive online racing community. When they said they needed the test cars back, I said...
So what, when a company loses favor with its customer base due to overcharging them for a product, they can just make up for it by offering more for a slashed price? Yeah, that's kind of exactly what they should do. You can't really be mad at that.
But now with an affordable video game console full of iconic protagonists, there was one giant gaping purple hole.
After a generational run of hit exclusive video games, PlayStation was ready to compete with Xbox in the next console release. And lucky for them, Xbox pulled a PS3 with the launch of the Xbox One, announcing a more expensive, clunkier machine that had a decreased focus on gaming and an increased focus on being the hub for all entertainment in the home. Xbox was more concerned with convincing you that you had to pay $500 for an Apple TV. Their initial marketing pitch was, yeah, sure, it's fun to play games on the Xbox, but what if you paid $500 for a Roku TV?
They also announced a new anti-consumer practice where you would no longer be able to use a game disc on an Xbox other than your own, meaning you couldn't sell your games to anyone, including turning it at GameStop, you couldn't let a friend borrow your games, or even bring it over to their house. It was stupid, short-sighted, and worst of all, mean. Oh, and on top of all of that, they intended the console to always be connected to the internet to play any game, regardless of its online features. This was 2013, so the amount of people with poor or no internet was much more significant than it is now. If you had shitty internet, Xbox's message to you was that you could not use the thing you paid $500 for.
During this time, Xbox CEO Dom Matrick had this to say when questioned about the pushback to these issues.
Fortunately, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called Xbox 360.
Right. So stick with 360, that's your message if you don't, like it?
If you have zero access.
He left Xbox soon after. Their launch felt corporate and less fun, while PlayStation publicly teased them and left the situation seeming pro-gamer.
This is how you share your games on PS4.
Thanks.
So with a brand new PS4, we were ready to experience the rush of great PlayStation exclusives. And then, there was like fucking nothing. Early adopters to the PS4 know that the first year was dry. It's not that there weren't any good games, but they were so spaced out that they had me playing DC Universe Online. Oh, you can make your own Superman? They have one already.
But the age of Spyro, Crash, Ratchet & Clank, Sly, and Jack, and Daxter was over.
The new faces of PlayStation were Nathan Drake, Joel Miller, Kratos, Cole. A lot of the mascots were just like guys.
White
guys. Yeah. They did have Sackboy from Little Big Planet, a game series we absolutely loved, and the beginnings of Astrobot as a mascot, but these two were not as culturally known as their PS2 counterparts, and didn't hold a candle to Mario.
To be honest, people probably knew Blooper more than they did Astrobot at this time.
They also had launched the PS4 with an attempt at a new mascot, Knack. But you can be sure that Knack was not a very successful mascot, because some of you didn't notice that this is not a silhouette of Knack. This is a silhouette of Knack. This is a silhouette of George Lopez's character from Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
This was the new direction of PlayStation. The faces of the console through the PS4 were adult characters in adult stories, some by the very developers of the cartoon era. Nathan Drake and Joel were created by Naughty Dog, Jin Sakai from Sucker Punch. Characters like Aloy and old Kratos covered PlayStation billboards and posters.
However, the creators of Spyro, Insomniac Games, had taken a brief detour from PlayStation, launching their game Sunset Overdrive as an Xbox exclusive on the Xbox One. A well-received game that didn't have much cultural impact due to the mediocre launch of the Xbox. Insomniac would leave this partnership with Xbox to get back with their X's box, the PlayStation 4, helping develop a video game for one of the most recognizable mascots in human history. After years of pumping out killer exclusives yet again, PlayStation cemented itself on top of the Xbox battle and had carved out a separate space of the gaming market to Nintendo. By 2018, it seemed like Spyro would never break out of his Skylanders prison. But finally, after years of being forced to share the spotlight with this fucking guy, and this guy, and even this guy, Spyro was released from the grips of Toys for Bob by its savior. Also Toys for Bob. With over a decade without a legitimate Spyro game, there were now fully grown adults that had been waiting since they were children to see another addition to the franchise. While that wouldn't quite come, Toys for Bob set out to do the original trilogy justice by remaking them from the ground up.
Spyro the Reignited Trilogy is a complete remake of the original series developed by Insomniac. Every aspect of the games were rebuilt, from the art design, models, animation, voice acting, and music. Toys for Bob was so adamant to, quote, get Spyro right, that they even created tools to map the original games exactly how they were, called the Spyroscope. This tool allowed them to extract things like the levels mesh, so the layout would be identical in the new game. They just paint over it with more detailed designs. This allowed them to make an almost exact copy of the original games, just with a modern coat of paint.
And they did a fantastic job. Booting up the first game, it's immediately apparent how much work went into faithfully recreating that original game we played on Demo Disc 8. The thing about a successful remake is it doesn't look exactly like the original. It should look like what you thought the original looked like when you were a kid. You should be able to look at Reignited and instantly think, yeah, that's what Spyro has always looked like. Only to go back to the PS1 game and be surprised by the fact that in comparison, Spyro's kinda chopped. A great remake captures that essence of the original, but also moves into the modern day while aligning with your fond memories. Something like Resident Evil 4's remake, and Reignited does just that. Honestly, with the Resident Evil series, Spyro, and Bluepoint's Demon Souls and Shadow of the Colossus, remakes feel like they're in a really good place right now. What's that? Bluepoint got shut down? Cool. Okay.
All 3 games in Reignited play identically to how they did in the 2000s, with only minor changes made to things for quality of life reasons. For example, the camera has been redone to allow for better control using the right analog stick, which is a good improvement because if they kept the original camera, it would be annoying. A guidebook was also added to all 3 games to easily track your progress throughout. All of this was done while maintaining the core gameplay, levels, and controls. Modern hardware and tools allowed for much more detailed models as well. The dragons that were originally just naked variations of 5 models are now unique, individually animated, voice acted, and designed characters with different accessories to reflect the location they're in.
It rocks. Reignited Trilogy just rocks. At 22, being able to experience the first game we ever played in a way that felt modern and fresh, while the rest of the gaming community was also enjoying it and giving it glowing praise, was a really cool moment for us. Also, during this time, we found out that a ton of people we knew also grew up with Spyro, and we didn't know that because nobody was talking about Spyro for like 18 years. So, things are finally looking good for Spyro again. Toys for Bob released a love letter remake that sold 10 million copies, a game that was enjoyed by fans old and new, bringing him back into the public consciousness.
In 2020, instead of a remake of an old classic PlayStation game, Toys for Bob proved that they could make original new additions to these series, making a brand new sequel to Crash Bandicoot 4: It's About Time. You would think that the smart move for Activision, Spyro's current owner, would be to task the dev team that just dedicated years to getting Spyro right and making a brand new Crash with creating their own original Spyro game.
But Bobby Kotick, CEO of Activision and piece of shit, led them in another direction. In 2021, Toys for Bob tweeted, "Toys for Bob is proud to support development for Season 3 of Call of Duty #Warzone, and look forward to more to come. #Let's Go Dev Squads, #Verdansk84. Oh fuck. And in 2022, Xbox moved to purchase Activision for nearly $70 billion. Microsoft, a $1 trillion company, buying the competition in a massive oligarchical move that for some reason a bunch of gamers were rooting for? You naive pawns for a massive corporation. All Phil Spencer, CEO of Xbox, had to do was wear graphic tees under his suit jacket, wear these fuck-ass leather shoes, and say that he loved gamers for half of Reddit to root for a mega merger in the gaming industry. Oh, maybe Xbox buying up a giant publisher for $70 billion will be good for the consumer. I have an Xbox and they've made next to no exclusives for over 10 years, but maybe if they buy a bunch of beloved video game franchises, I'll win an argument against a PlayStation fan in a Reddit thread." And then what happens next? Microsoft starts closing studios and laying off employees, sometimes cutting developers who made hit games just to manage their bloated Frankenstein business behemoth that needs to be fed more every quarter. Oh, but maybe they'll make a new Spyro exclusive for the Xbox. No, they won't, and no, they didn't. The Xbox community on Reddit and Twitter fucking rallied against the FTC for years, rooting for this acquisition to pass through. It is hilarious to go back and read these threads now. Somehow they treated Microsoft, one of the biggest corporations in the world, like they were the little guy. People are sure that Xbox will bring back their favorite Activision game to Game Pass or revive their favorite series, and they didn't do any of that shit. Oh, so you're just a Sony fanboy? No! It's a giant tech company selling a box of wires. I'm not a fucking loser. Go outside.
So Microsoft owns Spyro now.
Yeah.
Now that being said, Toys for Bob tweeted this in 2024, pretty obviously implying that they are working on an original Spyro game. This is good. And an important thing to note here is that Toys for Bob split off from Microsoft after the Activision acquisition, meaning that Xbox cannot close their studio like they did for so many others. The worst thing they can do is cancel the Spyro contract, but honestly, that seems unlikely with the talent at Toys for Bob and the fact that no one else seems to give a shit about Spyro at all. So we might actually see a faithful Spyro sequel for the first time since 2000.
For 26 years, Spyro has been passed around from corporation to corporation, detached from the original team that made him and his game so iconic. Everyone, since Insomniac, wanted something different out of Spyro that wasn't what he was created to be. And it took a team of people who actually gave a shit about getting Spyro right to even bring him back into the public eye. And surprise, it actually worked.
A new good Spyro will only happen when a group of talented people have enough of a voice at these companies to put the care into a game. We have hope that that can happen at an independent company.
But please, for the love of God, Stop hoping that your favorite trillion-dollar company will act in your best interest. The bigger and more bloated these entertainment companies become, the less of a voice individual artists have on these projects. Good video games and good art in general comes from collaborative spaces where a group of people have a clear vision that they can execute. Giant businesses are the exact opposite of that. But like we said, Spyro was the first video game we ever played. It is deeply ingrained in our childhood and our relationship as brothers. Spyro's been around since 1998, and we've seen the series move and mutate with the changing business of the video game industry. We'd like to say that he evolved with it, but the closest thing we've gotten to Spyro since 2000 was a lateral move, the remake of the first three.
And this isn't to say that Spyro needs to be exactly what he was in the late 90s. Mario is a perfect example of a character that has stayed true to its core while constantly changing the type of game he's in.
Toys for Bob spent years with the originals and probably has a better understanding of Spyro than anyone since Insomniac. So hopefully they'll do this little purple guy some justice. Maybe just don't use David Spade this time though.
He was good as Cusco.
He was good as Cusco.
That was the funniest movie Disney made.
Oh, yeah.
It's the banter, really.
It's the banter, right? It's the banter where it really shines.
Wait!
We have an announcement to make. We just wanted to quickly mention that Tony and I are launching a joint Patreon for my solo channel and this channel as well.
From Eddie's channel, you'll get stuff like DVD commentary of old videos and occasional shorts. And from the both of us, you can see our new monthly show, The Box from the Basement.
This Patreon is obviously completely optional and won't change our work on the YouTube channels. But if any of that sounds like something you'd be interested in seeing, we would really appreciate the support. The link to the Patreon will be in our description below, along with a video that explains everything a lot more.
You know, I talked to Spyro, and he told us he'd want you to support our Patreon.
What are you doing, like a Santa Claus thing for them?
It's what he said.
So dumb. All right, whatever.